Thanks to Elias Schuster and Bleacher Nation, we now know the players that the Chicago Bulls could target in free agency. We're going to discuss it all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, hosted by Haize, your number one spot for all things Chicago Bulls.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. And a lot of people are asking what the Bulls are going to do in free agency. And according to Elias Schuster over at Bleacher Nation, the Bulls are expected to target a lot of bigs and wings in the upcoming free agent market. And we have an actual list of players that we can discuss that could be on the Bulls board when free agency opens up. Keep in mind, the draft is going to happen first, which I do think is going to have a big impact on who the Bulls do decide to target in free agency if they get a big there, and also trades, overlooking trades of Zach Collins and of Nikola Vucevic that are possible there. But let's go ahead and get into some of these names, because I think some of these are names that some Bulls fans are going to be interested in and some are going to have more questions about. So one of the first names that we have is Precious Achiuwa, was mentioned as a potential target by the Chicago Bulls. This is a 6'8", 243-pound power forward / center who's currently playing for the New York Knicks. He's averaging 6.6 points per game, 5.6 rebounds on 56% shooting. One of the benefits of Precious is the defense, right? And the versatility that he can potentially bring here, right? And it would take probably less than the full mid-level exception to end up bringing him in here to the Chicago Bulls. So I'm not surprised to see his name here listed. Now, I do think that his ability to play power forward could either point towards a move at the center position or the fact that the Bulls are going to bring in a rookie center and maybe move Modest Buzelis to the 3, which would have some questions around what happens with Kevin Huerter. That's if they plan on starting him. Now, Precious is he started 10 games this year for the New York Knicks, so more than likely this would be some bench big depth. And I'm not too mad at that. When you look at what the Bulls have had off the bench for the power forward position this past season, it was really Julian Phillips and, of course, Patrick Williams. If Precious Achiuwa is signed, that could put some pressure on Patrick Williams, even defensively. We already know we're not getting a whole lot offensively for Patrick Williams. Precious is only taking 5 shots and only giving you 3.5 points less than what Patrick Williams gives you with better defense, at least over the last 2 seasons. So Precious Achiuwa being here as a name listed does not surprise me too much when it comes down to it. You guys can let me know how you feel about that one. The next name that was named here by Elias Schuster, that I will say this one did surprise me at least a little bit, and that is Caleb Houstan. This is a guy who plays with the Orlando Magic. He's 22 years old, so this would be out there trying to get players, again, youth and experience, but it's not really a whole lot of experience. This is a former second-round pick. He's been in the league for 3 years. He's only played a total of 168 games. He started 23 games over that time. And to me, this feels like we kind of have this already in Dalen Terry to me a little bit, right? This feels very similar to us already having that when it comes down to it. It really feels like, I don't know. I don't know what he brings that Dalen doesn't. He is 6'8", 205 pounds, right? He shot the 3-ball 40% from the field last year, but only taking 2.8 of those per game. He's a career 37% three-point shooter. So maybe that's what's enticing or could be enticing the Bulls a little bit here. But Caleb Houstan is a guy that, I can understand on adding some bench depth. 6'8", can play the guard, can play the forward, can play the 2 or the 3, but it feels like we already have this guy on the roster in Dalen Terry. And Dalen's going into the last year of his deal. Maybe there's some thought of putting some pressure on Dalen when it comes down to that, but personally, I'd want to go ahead and rock with Dalen. You look at what Caleb Houstan has done over his career. He's averaged 4.1 points per game. He's done that on 3.4 shots per game, only 39% shooting from the field. That 37% from 3 looks promising, but he doesn't take a whole lot of them. He averages 1.5 rebounds for his career, less than an assist, not a steal, not a block. This feels like Dalen Terry to me. That's what this feels like. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm completely off my rocker. Maybe it could bring something a little bit different to the Chicago Bulls, but this doesn't feel like the type of move that really does anything for the Bulls. Now, if you move on from Javon Carter, we already know THT is probably not going to be re-signed. You make a trade, you have to start doing some back end of the bench things maybe. Maybe the Bulls feel like at 22 years old, there's something here that maybe they can uncover. But then again, you got rid of your player development coach. So what are you doing in that case? Maybe I'm tripping. But I look at this and say, yeah, and Von, I feel you on that, right? Von says Houston can shoot better, but let's keep Dalen. Agreed, right? That's where I kind of sit with it. If Caleb Houston's a target here for the Bulls, it just feels like we kind of have we got Caleb Houston at home. That's what this one feels like. The next one up is a player that does definitely interest me, and it would be one of the bigger moves by the Chicago Bulls in a case like this as well, and that is Day'Ron Sharpe. Now, this is a center, 6'9", 265 pounds, right? So it's similar kind of physical makeup to like a Jalen Smith, but I would love to have Day'Ron Sharpe here a lot more, right? And with the Brooklyn Nets potentially targeting other positions and having to pay other people, right? Cam Thomas got to get paid. They have 3 first-round picks in this draft that could leave somebody like Day'Ron Sharpe on the outside looking in, and the Bulls could slide in there and try to assign him for less than full mid-level exception money. I think that he's worth a closer look when it comes down to that, right? I think that he's worth that look. You look at it and say 6'5", he's 23 years old, fits the mold again of young experience, right? That's kind of what AK's focused on. 4 years in the league so far, all with the Brooklyn Nets. He only averages 14.4 minutes per game, and that's not a lot. But what that does feel to me, that feels like the way that Billy Donovan uses a backup center, right? We've had Andre Drummond in here, Jalen Smith, Zach Collins. There's really no backup center that, unless the starting center goes down, averages more than about 15 to 16 minutes per game. And maybe the Bulls can try to entice Sharpe by offering him a little bit more, especially if they draft a young rookie. He's going to be a guy that's kind of more that has more experience there, maybe doesn't get into foul trouble. There could be those opportunities for him. And Day'Ron Sharpe is a really good rebounder per minute. And that seems like the thing that we've always kind of targeted with our backup center. Really good per-minute rebounders. He only averages 14.5 minutes per game for his career, but he averages almost 6 rebounds. That's extremely good production when you look at the per-minute production there. Also blocks, right under a block per game. He doesn't turn the ball over a whole lot, 1 turnover per game for his career. And so this is another calculated risk when it comes to that. He's only started 14 games over the course of his career. So it feels like a backup center acquisition by the Bulls. It really feels like that, right? Vaughn says Sharpe is the hidden gem, and that could be why he's on this list. Hidden gems, that's something that really looks at. His stats as a starter are really good. Agreed with that. You look at his stats as a starter. Hold on, let me pull that up real quick. Give me 1 second. I got too many windows. As y'all can tell, I'm upping the production quality. People have been saying, why don't you put pictures of the players you're talking about? Upping the production quality. There you go. As a starter, Day'Ron Sharpe averages 17 points, 15.5 rebounds, 1.5 blocks, 1 steal. That's ridiculous production. He's not going to keep that up as a starter, but at least it is something that you can look at and say, maybe it makes some sense to bring it in here, right? Maybe it makes some sense to bring Day'Ron Sharpe in here and see what he could be for your team. So Day'Ron Sharpe being on the list here doesn't really surprise me at all. Doesn't surprise me. I think this could be a solid acquisition. It really just depends on what the Bulls are looking for. Are they looking more for a starting caliber center to as the young center is kind of developing, or are they looking for kind of solid depth that can still play? Again, Day'Ron Sharpe is a guy that fits in the Bulls' play styles. He can get out and run. He can be a lob threat. He can do those type of things. So we'll see what it comes down to that one. But Day'Ron Sharpe, a guy that I like a lot for the Bulls. I do. But this next guy, I know I'm going to be out on a limb by myself on this one. This is a guy that I do like potentially a lot to come in here and play a specialized role for the Chicago Bulls, and that is Paul Reed, who is on this list. Again, I did not come up with this list. I'm not self-reporting here. This is by Bleacher Nation over at Elias Schuster over there, who talked about these guys. Paul Reed. Paul Reed is an unrestricted free agent, 25 years old. And he kind of fell out of the rotation with Detroit last year, but when you look at his defensive numbers, offensively, he's not giving you much of anything, right? He only averaged 9.7 minutes per game in 45 games for the Detroit Pistons. But the thing that really stands out to him is his block rate, his on-ball defense. He's not going to be one of those guys where anything in the stat sheet is not going to tell you this is a guy that we should bring in. Nothing's going to tell you that, right? But I think when you look at Paul Reed's game, and especially for the Bulls that need defense, this is a Bulls team that needs defense, defense, defense. Paul Reed can bring a lot of that. I think that he's the type of guy that you go out there and get that can be that dog for you, right? The Bulls don't have a lot of guys that have defensive identity. We got Ayo, we got Zoe who gets hurt all the time, right? We don't have a lot of defensive identity guys. Maybe Modest can turn into that. But Paul Reed is one of those guys that can come in, play tough for you. He's 6'9", 210 pounds. He's going to play that power forward role for you and some small ball center. And I like the way that he goes after things. He's not a guy that he does not back down. He does not back down. And so overall, I like Paul Reed here. I think that he makes sense. I think that he's a guy that can be a very affordable option for you as well. I don't think you're going to be breaking the bank to get Paul Reed in here or anything. This is a vet minimum signing, like the Bulls have done with like a Jalen Smith, that you can get in here, but can maybe give you a little bit more than you're expecting, right? And that's why I like Paul Reed and love the fact that he is on this list for the Chicago Bulls, right? Next up that the Bulls have on this list, according to Elias Schuster, is a guy that I did not expect to hear mentioned with the Bulls at all, and that is Jake LaRavia, who played with the Sacramento Kings. This is another guy that's very young, 23 years old, 6'7", 235 pounds, can play either of the forward spots. So if you're looking for that forward depth, again, the Bulls expected to target bigs and wings. He's in his third year in the NBA. He moved from Memphis to Sacramento last year. He did average almost 19 minutes per game with Sacramento Kings last year. He had a season in 2023-24 where he played 35 games. He averaged 23 minutes per game in that time. He averaged 10 points per game on 38% shooting, though, right? So this would be one of those moves that I look at and I say, I don't know about this one. I don't know what Jake LaRavia would really do for the Chicago Bulls personally. Maybe I'm tripping on that one. I mean, I get that he's young, 23, he has really good upside, but I think that I would rather keep an EJ Liddell. Like, I mean, in my personal opinion, if you're going to sign Jake LaRavia to an actual NBA contract, I'd rather give EJ Liddell that opportunity. Now, one thing Elias Schuster doesn't point out here is that are some of these guys going to be looked at as two-way players, right? And that could be something that happens here, is that these guys are more so looked at as maybe two-way contract candidates. And if that's the case, I'm not mad at that. If you're bringing in Jake LaRavia on a two-way contract after he hasn't really played a lot of time in Memphis or in Sacramento, but he's shown you a little bit, I think that that's a really good use of your two-way contracts. But if you're telling me that, keep in mind, the Bulls are only slated to have one open roster spot. And if you're telling me you're giving that one open roster spot to Jake LaRavia, I'm going to have mad questions about what the goal is here. What are we actually trying to do here, if that's the case? Again, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh on Jake LaRavia, but when you look at his career, like, he shoots the ball 42% from the field, 37% from three, doesn't pass too well, doesn't rebound too well. Like, I'm struggling outside of the season where he averaged 10 points per game at a time period where they had players out injured and stuff like that. I'm looking and saying, what the fuck is he bringing here that we need? That's just my personal opinion and outlook on it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Bulls can get a steal. Maybe they view Jake LaRavia as somebody who can come in here and be an absolute steal for you. I'm not saying that I necessarily see that, but I am open to being surprised. So if that's the case, Jake LaRavia is a player that is mentioned here as well. Another guy who is also mentioned for the Chicago Bulls in this list was also Josh Minott. Is it Minott or Minott? I don't know. I'm murdering his name. This guy's a 6'8", 205-pound forward, multi-forward. I think he's more on the wing when you look down at that. Again, another guy that has really good youth. He's been in the league for 3 years. Really hasn't done much of anything for that Minnesota Timberwolves team, though, but he is 22. And it seems like sometimes AK can get caught up in youth and think that means you're doing something there. we'll see, right? Like, Minott is just a guy that I scouted him when he came in that draft, and he did have some interest in that second round, but it's just I haven't seen anything from him that to me says that this is a guy that you have a chance to uncover some type of gem or something here. Personal opinion again, I'd be happy to be wrong on that. But again, another guy that's on this list that really has no type of redeeming skill to me. Nothing that seems redeeming in a case like this. He just seems like a guy that's a guy. He's 2 years away from being 2 years away, which may never come. It may never come. So maybe, right? But what is the aim? What are we trying to get out of this? Is the question that I would have for AK there. Is this a two-way contract? Is this a guy that you're hoping is going to be able to come in and maybe shed some light on some other things for you? Maybe. But it's not a guy that I'm looking at and I'm saying, hey, I feel very confident that we're signing this guy and we're going to get anything out of it other than hope. And I'm so tired of AK and his hope picks. That's what I'm tired of. Stop picking shit for hope. Ain't no hope here in Chicago. We ain't got no hope. There's no hope here because you ain't gave us no reason to have no goddamn hope, AK. So Josh Minott, whatever it is, keep that. I'm kind of good on that personally. I'm kind of good on that. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If this is anything other than a two-way player, I'm gonna be looking at AK like, this is what you got for us? Like, I'd rather you just keep Trey Johnson in that case. Keep Trey Johnson. Or Trey Jones. I wish we had Trey Johnson. That's all I can say on that one, because Josh Minott ain't bringing nothing that we need here. Again, this is another thing where I'm looking at it, I'm saying, we got Dalen Terry, we got Julian Phillips. I'm cool. I'm good with what we got here. I don't need any of these guys that you're sitting here presenting to me as an option here. But the last guy on this list that we're going to discuss, there's some other names on here, but it's not really guys that I think are really worth really talking about at any meaningful level. But the last guy, Keon Johnson. Now, he has a team option with the Brooklyn Nets, which we don't know what the Brooklyn Nets are going to do. But at 6'5", 185 pounds, a guy that's a guard, though, which the Bulls really don't need guards unless they're trying to tell us something. But this is a guy that last year played 79 games. He started 56 of those games. He put up 10 points per game on 38% shooting, 31% shooting from three, 4 rebounds, 2.2. You know what this feels like? One steal. This feels like young THT. This feels like, THT is young. Like nine shots to get you 10 points. That's a little questionable, right? Now, again, I can see where the interest could be in that as a back end of the bench guy. As a starter last year, he started 56 games, and as a starter, he scored 12 points on 39% shooting. He took 11 shots to get 12 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal and a half per game. What's that doing for you? What's that doing for you? That's the question. Is that doing anything for anybody? Is that doing anything for anybody that's in this chat? Again, I think also for anybody that's looking at this and judging it, right, keep in mind, all this will come after the draft. And so maybe the draft adds a little bit more clarity to this, right? But if you're looking at this list, the guys that really stand out to me, Precious Achiuwa, Day'Ron Sharpe, and Caleb Houstan. Those are the 3 guys that interest me the most, if you're saying that. And then, like I said, even then, Caleb Houstan, I'm almost willing to just keep Dalen Terry, right? But maybe you're bringing in some competition for that. Paul Reed, too. Paul Reed as well. Those are the 4 guys I'm looking at on this list. Precious Achiuwa, Day'Ron Sharpe, Paul Reed, Caleb Houstan. That's the only ones that are even remotely doing anything. So, we'll see what happens when it comes down to that. Overall, we'll see. But I wanted to bring this news to you. This just dropped not too long ago. You guys know when news drops, I drop. And that just is what it is. But let me know what you guys are thinking, man. How are you guys feeling about hearing this list by the Chicago Bulls? That is Trenton Wofford, isn't it? My bad. Hey, listen, I just grabbed the first image I saw. I'm trying to get this together, right? Y'all said y'all wanted overlays. Y'all said y'all wanted images. I'm doing my best. This is the first time I did something like this. But overall, man, I'll say this. I do think that this points towards that there's going to be an overhaul at the center, regardless of what that looks like. And I don't mean just trading Nikola Vucevic. I mean that could come down to moving off a couple of the centers that we have in here and bringing in a couple of more. You bring in a guy like Day'Ron Sharpe, to me, that signifies you're probably going out there and getting a young center, and you want a guy who can come in that's a veteran that can fill in when that rookie gets in foul trouble and something like that. That's what it feels like to me. But we'll see. Let me know your guys' thoughts on all that down below. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls.